and welcome to Interviews with In-House Legal, a Spotlight on Success. Today, Sarah Thompson, Chief Product Officer of BlueStar, will be speaking with Diane Diaz, Senior Litigation Paralegal at McDonald's. They have the best French fries. Diane, I love your company's French fries. They are so delicious, so salty, and so perfect. And they also have the best coffee. Love my coffee. So Sarah has the yummy task of talking about all things legal, eDiscovery, and McDonald's. Today's talk is presented by BlueStar. We are an end-to-end litigation and eDiscovery company that has been serving the greater America since 2003. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce these lovely ladies. I've got Sarah Thompson and Diane Diaz. Thank you so much, Diane, for being with us today. How are you?
My pleasure. Thanks for having me today. And you're right, our fries are world famous. You know, there's no denying that. So I'm happy to be here.
And your Big Macs. And we're happy to have you here. And we're so excited to hear all of your successes with McDonald's. And Sarah, thank you for being with us today. How are you?
I'm doing just great. I'm really excited to be talking to Diane today.
Awesome. All right, girls, this is where I'm going to sign off and leave you two to have your talk. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to listening to you guys. Bye.
Well, Diane, here we go. I wanted to start off with one of the most pressing questions on everyone's mind. First of all, why do we not have poutine in the American McDonald's?
I can't answer that. Not a fan. So, you know, it's not one of my things. So
I have to say, I think I need to start, what could we do to get it into the McDonald's, like particularly in Simi Valley, California? I'm a ex-Canadian that, is gotten, can't get my poutine on. So I just want to put it out there. If there's any strings you can pull, that would be awesome.
I'll see what I can do. I got some people in the background. I'll send them an email.
Nice. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about, let's get into the eDiscovery, the litigation, all this good stuff. So tell me, what is your role? What do you do in your role as senior litigation paralegal at McDonald's? What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah. So first, I've been with the company for 17 years, seen a lot, been around the block, kind of grew up in this eDiscovery space when it was first sort of just rolling out. I work with 9 lawyers. There's 3 paralegals on the team, 2 admins, and every day is different depending on what case that we're working on. It's a fun group. It's a really fun group. We have a unique position, I think, in that we touch all aspects of the business. It's not just simply real estate matters. We do a lot of real estate, but
oh, really?
We're working with supply chain, we're working with menu management, we're working with government relations. It's pick a different day. So it's a good variety.
So that must be one of the things that you love about your role there at McDonald's, is just the fact that every day could be different and you don't really know what's going to come your way.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know. Is it going to be a good juicy subpoena? Or is it going to be a really juicy piece of litigation? Not that we want that to happen, but it's a new day.
So, is this you say that there's a few admins, a few paralegals. It doesn't sound like there's a huge team there. Is that just in the Americas you're talking about, or in the United States? Are you talking about, or is your team global?
Our team we do support, it's a global litigation team. We do support the global as well, but our team is just here in the US. So.
Wow. So your team is tasked with kind of handling the litigation of one of the largest corporations on the planet. That sounds like a pretty small team. So you must really have your hands full on every day.
Small but mighty, and we have some good protocols in place that we follow, and it's just it's a great group of people that I have the privilege and pleasure of working with daily.
Oh, that's wonderful. You mentioned that you'd been at McDonald's for 17 years as a paralegal. So that's a long time. You must love it there. But what has evolved for you in the position as paralegal during that time? Because a lot has changed with technology, obviously, and litigation. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it sure has changed, right? I mean, coming in 17 years ago, we were just focused on issuing a legal hold via email or actually inter-office mail, right? You did it that way, and then you're just focused on collecting those paper files. But as this EDRM picture evolved, it just you grew into this space. You didn't really know it. You didn't know it. I didn't know it until I actually put pen to paper and was like, holy smokes, what, I'm supporting this EDRM model from left to right in every single area of that space. So it was one of those things that just sort of exploded in front of me, and I ran with it. I had the opportunity. I started in 2004. So pick a year, 2004, 2005. And one of our lawyers who was responsible, I guess, for eDiscovery, she was talking about the way we were going to be collecting emails and all that. And I was in a team meeting, and I was like, you know what? That seems to be going to be changing my entire job. Why aren't I involved in this process? And she's like, come on board. And there it was. There, it hasn't stopped.
Do you find that the technology in the legal tech space has helped you a lot? Is it helping you more now than before? I mean, like, what is your kind of sense in terms of tools? Like,
yeah. I mean, going back to when you're reviewing emails natively and all of the time-consuming efforts that was, or the antiquated processes that we had in order to do that. I was just begging for some sort of a tool. I knew they were out there. You're talking to vendors, and finally we were able to put together a good business case, if you will, to bring on an early case assessment tool, and then it just sort of escalated from there. I mean, you got to have it today. It's all electronic data. You can't do this just natively.
Can you remember what your first legal tech tool was?
Yeah, I do. Okay. Yes. The first tool that we had was Clearwell. Because we were reviewing natively in Outlook. And so I was like, this Clearwell thing, that's amazing. Let's bring it on. So we did. And I loved it. You loved it until like you jump into it, and then like all these other tools are coming on board, and this one's not being supported anymore. And I'm like, but it worked really well for us for a few years.
Do you think that there's any kind of room in the space for technology to kind of, so let me rephrase this. Are there any problems that technology should be solving, but they aren't today? That you can think of?
I guess if I had a wish list, I think I don't think I'm alone in this space, at least with my colleagues. You wish technology would just have this one end-to-end solution and just like one tool, easy to use. I don't have to be certified to use it, right? Just one tool where I could log in. Here's point A, you issue your legal hold, you do this, and then you review, you process, you export, and boom. But it just doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to some legal tech vendors, they might argue with you, but I think I agree.
They would.
As well.
They would.
There's not a one tool fits all kind of solution out there. And certainly if there is, it's not easy to use, which may be by design, I'm not sure, but we kind of like that because we're certified in those tools. But on the other hand, is it something that you'd want to do? Would you want to be kind of running the entire eDiscovery process, like not having to outsource ever? Or do you like the fact that you're actually getting some work off your plate and giving it to, outside vendors?
That's a great question. I don't want to do it all because I'm not that, I don't want to be in the tool and reviewing, and I can get in the tool, I tag and I can export and do all that, but I don't want to be what my law firm does, where they're in there and they're doing all of that. So that's a piece. I can get it to a point, and then I'm like, here, now you guys go and do your thing. And then I let the vendor take on the biggest export piece of that from a production perspective.
So it sounds like, and I think I've heard this a lot from different corporations. It's really about finding those trusted partners to kind of like share share the work a little bit, talk a little bit about your team. Let's kind of circle back. You mentioned that you have kind of a very small team. It seems like that a lot of them are women. Is that true?
It is. I mean, my two colleagues that I talk to and collaborate with on a daily basis are women.
Yeah, I'm wondering. That's not uncommon, actually. For in-house counsel to be, kind of supported by like mainly, largely a woman staff. Why do you think that is? Is there something about the position that women just like, oh, I love it, why is it that we're attracted to these roles?
I don't know. It's a really great question. I was thinking about that. Our paralegals, we've got maybe 50 paralegals in the U.S. legal department, and one man, he's the lone soldier in the pack. And I don't know why that is. I can't put my finger on it, but I would say from McDonald's legal department, someone just recently said that 60% of the legal department is women. So it's just, it's a thing.
Huh. We should think about that a little more and figure out what that is exactly. So let me ask you, what got you started into this line of work? So maybe that will lead us to the answer. What attracted you specifically?
Well, I can say what attracted me to the legal profession actually was my grandmother. So going way back when I was a kid in elementary school, she was a legal secretary at a law firm.
Okay.
And she would have to work on a Saturday on occasion, and she would take me or my sister in there. And I thought that was great. It was like you go in there and you had typewriters, and she had this big supply room. And then she would take, what do you call it? Stenography?
Yeah, right.
So she would go in with her lawyer, do that, and she'd come out and she'd type it all up. I'm like, this is great. Like, I just thought it was the coolest thing. So I kind of always set my eye on legal. And then once I actually got into the workforce, I landed in the finance industry, which wasn't my favorite. But that's kind of where I settled in, and I was in the city, and then I ended up working in getting an opportunity in a legal department, still working in the finance industry, but was for a litigator. I worked for a litigator. I'm like, this is great. It just kind of evolved from there. And then I won't bore you with all the other details, but I just liked being in-house. I did go to a small boutique firm for a few years, which was great. A lot of great experience, great lawyers there, but it was more boutique law firm. You did everything. It wasn't just focused on that litigation side of it. And so when the opportunity opened up at McDonald's, I threw my hat in the ring, and lo and behold, here I am 17 years later. I tended to be a job jumper. Every 3 years, I would kind of get bored and just look for something else. And crazy that it's been 17 years and I'm still here. And I'm still loving it. I'm loving it.
I'm loving it. Yeah, 17 years is not what I would consider a job jumper. But, there's a lot of, younger professionals that are kind of just entering, the workforce, and that are, kind of trying to find their way. People that are just, graduating as paralegals and things like that. And you talked about how you tried out, law firms and in-house. And so I kind of have a two-part question, what for those younger people that are looking to kind of, start their career, what's the real, you mentioned that, in-house, it's just litigation. Is that the biggest difference between law firms and in-house counsel that you would feel as it comes to a paralegal role?
Well, in-house, I think there's more opportunities. I guess when you're in a law firm, and again, I didn't work at a big one, so I just supported the one lawyer that was doing the litigation, and I happened to like that particular field. So from a corporate side, I just feel like there's more opportunity. I think I could jump over to the real estate side. I don't have any knowledge of that, But you could certainly sort of cross-train. You have those development opportunities where you can shadow a real estate paralegal, or maybe get on a good project, to kind of just follow along there. So that's a great opportunity. Same thing like on the corporate side, like with the all the books and records and the board meetings and all of that stuff too. So that's another area when you're in-house that you could get involved with.
Do you think there's a more of a focus in-house on eDiscovery, the technology, or is the opposite true?
On my team, I mean, there's certainly a focus for eDiscovery. We're the only team that focuses on that, right? So because we handle it for all of our cases. And from a technology perspective, I think that lands in my lap and my two colleagues' laps, just to bring it on, make sure that we're using, the up-to-date technology that's going to get us where we need in a quick and reliable fashion, so to speak.
Gotcha. Do you have any, we're talking about kind of speaking directly to kind of younger paralegals. And what if this younger paralegal was you? What advice would you think you would give yourself, 17 years ago, talking to yourself 17 years ago? Do you have any advice or things you would do differently? Or
I wouldn't do anything differently. I think I've done pretty well in my career, but what I would say is don't just sit back and watch it happen. Speak up. Had I not spoke up 17 years ago when that process was changing, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe somebody else would be sort of leading the show for this particular part of my job. So I just speak up, right? And be candid. I tend to be a very candid person, like it or not. This is just, it's me, so some people are, oh, I don't know how they would feel about that. Well, you won't know until you speak up, and you gotta kind of be transparent. I'm all about being transparent too. And that's just kind of how I've learned. So that's what I would tell a younger person, coming out into this particular field.
So, don't be intimidated and put in your 2 cents, go get to the table and participate. That's some great advice. Of all of the kind of over the 17 years at McDonald's, of all of the tools and processes you've implemented, is there any one of them that you're like most proud of, or that you?
I don't know that there's one that I'm most proud of. I pride myself on being that strategic thinker. We've got a problem. How are we going to solve it? The lawyers are like, oh, we're having all of these meetings with the same client. We keep hitting them hard. How are we going to solve for that? So, there's all of these tools out there today. So let's figure out how to put our notes together and have one spot for people to go to, creating a library, right? I love being that strategic thinker and solving a problem. Finding the needle in the haystack. That's what I'm most proud of, making those processes a consistent and repeatable process for all of us to follow, so nobody else has to recreate that wheel, right?
Is there any kind of problem today that is like top of mind, that you're kind of strategizing about or trying to solve?
The data. Oh, the data, right? Just trying to wrangle that beast in. Any large company is going to have a lot of data. So how do you do it? You want one lens into what you have. So that will always be the beast, right? And with more tools we're bringing on, as the company grows, our space has to grow. We've got to, wrap our head around it and embrace it. You can't just tell them, no, we're not going to use that, because we don't want to be the no person. We work with them to strategize and to make sure, at least from an eDiscovery perspective, we can mend with that tool. We can play with that tool as well.
Well, has it ever happened where, the company has taken on a certain technology or tool? I mean, it could be cell phones or whatever, that, is just too challenging and too expensive in terms of, fulfilling your corporate preservation obligation? Has that ever happened where you've had to say no?
not, nothing that I can, that comes top of mind, right? I mean, if there's something out there, we're going to do we're going to do our best to wrap our head around it and be able to preserve and produce if we need to.
It's a good answer. So I right now, this is a really interesting time for everybody on the planet with this pandemic that seems to be never ending. I recall last year, this time, when we were coming out of it, we were talking a lot about, how corporations had to change, the way they did business. How has McDonald's had to kind of, change their processes or the way that they work during this time?
Well, I can speak from my seat,
Right.
the business as a whole, obviously we pivoted and we made our changes. But from my seat, it was, we were already in that sort of hybrid workspace anyway. You're working from home a couple days a week and in the city the other days a week, and we were very flexible, and I'm extraordinarily pleased that I work with a flexible team. So we were already kind of doing that, and then as this Teams rolled out, we used it. We beat on it. At least from an eDiscovery perspective, I'm like, we got to wrap our head around this to figure out what it's all about. And that Teams was quite a web to untangle, right? So, but working from home.
Just a second. Are you referring to Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, Microsoft Teams. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah.
But from my seat, it just opened up a new way to collaborate. I think I talked more with my two colleagues every day than I did when I was, going back and forth into the city. It's just what you did. And, you're sitting here in your seat all day long, longer as it was, and you had all of these things going on. So it was just a matter of, with the press of a button, it was like you were popping your head over a cube, right? You're like, and now you're in your face. So we didn't miss a beat, and it was kind of a lot of fun. And it still is a lot of fun. So I just think it's a new way of working. I love it.
I love it too. I've actually, been working from home for many years, more than I would like to disclose, to be honest. And I always find that, you find your ways to connect, and I think that, having that good work-life balance is super important to be productive. And I'm sure that sounds like what you're saying as well. That you appreciate how McDonald's has been flexible in their options, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned Microsoft Teams, and you also mentioned having an end-to-end eDiscovery platform, right? So,
I wish.
Well, Microsoft does have what they claim to be an end-to-end eDiscovery platform. Do you have any comment about that?
I have a lot of opinions. I don't know if they're right. I mean, they're my opinion. Everybody has an opinion about it. But we look at tools all the time. We looked at using the Security and Compliance Center for the end-to-end eDiscovery solution. But there's always going to be holes that you poke, and they seem to have made it, and I can't remember if it was the conversation that I had with you guys or somebody else, but Microsoft has made it very lucrative for themselves. You have to have that big E5 license, like in order to be able to work with it all. And so who the hell's going to do that? It's not going to be us. So you work with a portion of it, and we created processes in order to be able to use some of it, but not all of it. Hence, we've got.
I think you're absolutely right. I have to agree with you. I think that's the biggest hurdle that Microsoft needs to kind of address, is like, you've got this great functionality. You're wondering why people don't use it. It just doesn't make sense from a licensing perspective. That's my opinion as well. So you mentioned Microsoft Teams. Microsoft 365 has that great functionality that comes along with that lower level license to be able to preserve any data in Teams along with every other source in Microsoft, right? So does that like bring any concerns to a team like yours? Because the nature of those teams conversations tend to be a little bit more casual, a little bit more conversational. What do you think about that?
Yeah, like I said, I think Teams was one of those webs that you really had to untangle. There was a lot of places. My colleague and I were just like, we needed like a whiteboard, and we wanted to say, okay, this goes here because you got your channel, your channel messages, one to many, and then if you attached a document, it went to a SharePoint site, and then now you've got those one-to-one chat messages, your instant messaging. So where did those go? Where did those reside? Well, they actually reside in your mailbox. Nobody really knows that. I mean, the only people getting into the weeds on that is me, and getting all excited about, how am I going to preserve it all, right? So, I think the way that we dealt with it was just relying on our instant messaging policy, and people know that it's out there. The RIM team does a great job educating people on where those policies reside, so they can figure out what they need to do.
Wonderful. I definitely think that, as you say, policy, well, one, understanding your data source, having a great policy for your employees, and education is really the key to having a great preservation policy. Now, I just wanted to kind of finish up with like asking you, you've been in this position for 17 years, you've evolved over time, really taking on a lot of legal tech, implementing different policies and procedures. What's next for you? What are you aspiring to?
Retirement. No, I don't know. I love my job, and it really wasn't until a few months ago where, like I said, I put pen to paper and was like, what the hell am I really doing what am I doing? And it was crazy. I mean, what I do in looking at this EDRM, I'm like, holy smokes. And then you quantify, okay, I really do this, where it started out, we were just so focused on legal holds and getting that out to our business. But the technology and has just exploded. So where do I want to go in 5 years? I don't know. I hope that I'm still here with the company and growing, but I kind of like this educational piece. I gotta just to keep talking about it. I've been, over the course of the last year, I tried to get more involved in the Women in eDiscovery, at least the Chicago chapter, and you listen to what all of those business people are doing in their own space. I'm like, I do that. And those people are, in legal ops or whatever, but I hope that I'm still here and just talking and growing with others in this space, because clearly it's going to continue to grow.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Diane, in your 17-year career at McDonald's, in what ways do you think that you've brought value to that corporation in your role as senior litigation paralegal?
Good question. So, I think it's kind of almost, it's a hard one, but in thinking about it, and I always go back to this EDRM is kind of just what I follow, what I do, right? And being sort of an early adopter an early adopter user follower of this spectrum, if you will, right? And just the historical knowledge that I bring in my role of 17 years and just watching it grow. Again, it's not just preserving anymore. It's learning about what technologies are being brought on. How does that function? What does the metadata look like? I never thought I would talk about metadata and get all excited about it, but I do. And then, even from an information governance perspective, you hit on that, because you gotta know what's coming into the company from a new technology perspective. You gotta be able to figure out where the eDiscovery preservation and production comes in. So all the way down to the other side to like disposition, you're constantly following all of that. So that value and that knowledge, knowing that, the lawyers are defending the company, they're running with it, they're working it. I'm in the background, and I might be sending out your legal hold, but then I am off to the races. I'm talking to people, I'm identifying where it is. And if I find a new one, I'm going to figure out how to collect it, preserve it, and do what I need to do. So that is the value that I think that this particular role that I personally bring to McDonald's, to the legal department.
I think it's a very important point that you're making. And I kind of want to take it a step further here to really kind of illustrate the value of your position and people that are doing the work that you're doing in a corporation. What would happen if you weren't doing that work? What could be the consequences to a corporation that wasn't, preserving and collecting and thinking like you are about all the different data in the ESI landscape?
Yeah, obviously it's a big risk, and I think it puts more pressure on the lawyers. If they didn't have us, then they might be relying on outside counsel, and those fees are going to go up because those outside counsel, then they got to do what I do and figure out, where did this technology come in? What is it connected to? Type thing. So, we're helping drive down risk and control costs from an outside counsel perspective.
Well, I don't think, not only that, I mean, you're ensuring that you're fulfilling your corporate preservation obligation, and therefore avoiding sanctions, right? And possibly in some cases. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I also think that, there are times when the data that you have preserved, can really help you. Some people think of it as a hindrance in times, but often it can actually help you in litigation. And so you're ensuring that evidence is there when they need it, when the lawyers are needed. So, hats off to you, because without having people like you that are actually there preserving, collecting in a forensically sound manner, I mean, you really are preventing a huge risk to this company. And we didn't even mention spoliation. You talk about metadata. If we want to nerd out on metadata, this is all about, making sure that the document that you preserved or collected is as pristine as it can be, meaning it's forensically sound. No one's tampered with it. And that's all to do with the metadata not changing. And because you're thinking about it, your litigators are not going to be going to, facing a judge and, having evidence thrown out because of spoliation. So I think this is extremely important, the job that you do. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for sure.
So thank you so much, Diane, for talking with us today. It's been a real pleasure. And I wish you all the best to you and your family.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, ladies, both of you. That was a lot of information. It's really amazing how much more paralegals do. Not only are you lawyers, paralegals, moms, therapists, office managers, technology support and experts, you're data detectives. You're so underappreciated. I can't even tell you. I think we should all go and run to our paralegals and just tell them what an amazing asset they are and thank them for the amazing job that they do in making the legal team the success that it is. And thank you, Sarah, for your lovely interview. And Diane, thank you for being with us.